Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Photo Mish Mash, this one being broadcast live January 6, 2021. Welcome to the new year. It's the new year. We left 2020 behind, so everything is perfect, right? There's no crazy world-ending events going on right now. Is there? I don't know. It's actually bad enough that I'm going to just stop joking because, if you're watching the news, today has not been great for America. But we scheduled this show and we're going to go on, and I'm so glad to have my good friends join me once again to chat about week's news and to try to turn some of those goals that we talked about last week into reality. We have some updated news on Canon saying that they are dropping the EOS M line, which is their mirrorless aps-c. That I predicted a while back. I did not expect them to say, you know what, we're going to have aps-c, our system, but we're not going to make any aps-c lenses. They're all going to be full frame lenses. So I'm really curious to hear, Steve and David, your opinion about that. And some updated information on that new Fuji monster 102 megapixel that's coming with a significant price drop over its predecessor. Plus all the other little things and reviewing your photos. But first, let me say, hi, Steve. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Yeah, somber, sad day indeed, and just kind of feels surreal to sit here and put on a big smile and look at the camera. But thank God for the two of you guys being on the show. This is definitely a bright spot in my afternoon. So we're, as they say in Hollywood, the show must go on. So here we are, and glad to be here. Hi to the chat room, and I don't know, as far as keeping resolutions, you kind of threw that out there casually. I think my resolution was to rediscover the artist in me this year, which is a big task. And part of that was to start painting, which I haven't done yet. But I'm proud to say I've gotten back on a really nice routine of exercising each day and showering every day and just being productive. So
baby steps.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Baby steps. I'm pretty proud of that. And I'm 3 days in, because everything started on Monday.
That's right.
And, so here we are.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say I noticed you've posted again to Instagram and a very simple but beautiful image. So if you don't follow Steve yet, you should follow him. His social media Instagram handle is linked right down below this video.
Was that the one of my wife and I throwing up champagne bottles for?
No, it's the backgammon. It's the backgammon.
Oh yeah. That was an iPhone shot. My wife and I have been into full contact backgammon, as we put it. And it dawned on me once I posted that picture was actually taken a couple days earlier, but we were playing just on a different table. And when I had originally set up the set, if you look closely, the where the chips are, they're on the wrong point. Where there's 3 chips. For you backgammon nerds out there, you know what I'm talking about. And it dawned on me after I posted that, and I'm like, man, the picture's so good. I'm just gonna have to put a disclaimer that we did, in fact, set it up properly before we began.
Nice. I gotcha. All right. And David Carr, welcome back to the show. How are you doing, David?
Doing well. Obviously weighed down like everybody is by current events. And I just want to say it means a lot. Everybody who's joining us right now, I realize this probably isn't like necessarily a time to be lighthearted about world events, but it really means a lot that you would come and join us right now in this little hour and a half or so. It's we all, no matter what's going on, all of us here love photography, and we love to encourage one another in it and talk about it. And so let's just do that for the next hour and a half. It's not to say world events don't matter, but there's not a whole lot any of us can do about that right now. And let's just encourage one another and just have a nice time here together. So
yeah. Well said. Thank you. And David, you had a great video you put out in the waning hours of 2020 on your YouTube channel, which just I think we feel very similar about kind of how people create goals and then how hard they are on themselves, and then how the extra pressure that we feel from social media. So if you're a photographer, if you're watching this show, I think you like all of us enough, you should go watch David Carr's video as well. Again, that's on his YouTube channel, linked right down below this video. And I thought the way you presented that was just very, very well done. I
Thank you.
really appreciate your words in that video, and I think they are good. They are good to listen to, even though we're now a few days past the end of 2020.
Yeah, well, thank you. No, I mean, it was really a very last minute thing because I was just in what I talk about in the video, and it's also on my podcast, the David Carr podcast. But what I talk about in that is exactly what I was struggling with in even getting this video and this podcast out. Was like, I don't really want to do it. I don't feel any motivation to do this. Who cares? Like, what does it matter? And I started looking back at some of my stats from 2020 for my podcast and my little fledgling YouTube channel, which, you know, if you don't put a lot of work into something, you can't expect to get a lot out. And that's fair enough. But I lost so much motivation about midway through the year to really dig into that stuff. And then I was looking back at the responses I was getting from people, and I was like, you know what? People like this. And it may not just be me, but they like this kind of thing. They like this show. And there's always an audience for it, you know? And I just thought I need to dig into that, and just, it's like going to the gym, you know, or going out for a run. The first thing you do is you put your shoes on, and then a lot of times you're motivated to go do the thing. And so for me, it was like literally plugging this microphone in and turning my webcam on and just saying, I'm just going to go for it and say what's right here on my heart and mind, and I'm not going to edit it. And that's what it was.
Nice, good. Well, it came out really well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, a couple quick things. Just a reminder, this show is brought to you by the Photo Enthusiast Network. If you're watching this and you're in our chat room, you probably are a PEN member, as we like to call you. I'm really proud of the PEN community. We're now just celebrated our 2, 3, I don't even know, anniversary. And it's just a fantastic community where if some of your goals are to improve as a photographer this year, and again, if you're watching this, that's probably in line with what you're thinking, PEN is a fantastic place to find a group of people to support you as you try to reach those goals, and also the educational material that we provide is going to greatly improve your chances of meeting those goals. And I'll be honest, it's going to improve your chances. It's not going to guarantee it, because so much of that is on you. But we provide a lot. And again, with that community that I'm just so proud of, as a fantastic group of supportive and helpful people. I say the Lightroom tech support alone that some of you all receive as you run into these errors, and then Roy and sometimes me is just right there with an answer. I think that's probably worth $24 a year for your first year as a subscriber. I worked that out. It's like 47 cents a week. Is that right? Or a day? No, it's a week. Yeah, it's super affordable. So check that out. I also want to highlight a couple of deals of the day, and these are in the show notes, which are on photorec.tv. I think I forgot to link them down below. One is the Tamron 20mm f2.8 lens. I had that sitting right here. It's currently, and there's a couple of the different of these little Tamron f2.8 lenses. I know f2.8 isn't particularly fast, but I love how small and compact it is. And it also happens to be the lens that I captured my favorite photo of 2020 in Death Valley, this kind of sand dune shot, just a little bit wider. It's also a great astrophotography lens, and it's so small, compact, sharp enough, and right now it's on sale at B&H for $250. So we talked a lot about Nikon and Canon both having great systems now, and across the board I think you've got great systems from all major manufacturers. In mirrorless, I'm still giving Sony a little bit of edge with the fact that so many decent third-party lenses are out there, and so many that are quite affordable. So if you are looking for a affordable, compact, wide-angle lens, this little Tamron is an option for you. Another deal, I got an email from Backblaze today. They are now offering, if you sign up through my link, you'll get 2 free months. So that's decent.
That's good.
They've also now enabled 2-factor authentication. So if you really would like to make sure your content is locked down, you can turn that on. And their standard, now this is important because we talk about this, and David McKay sent out an email just reminding everybody, new year, check your backups. If you don't have backups, start to figure out how to make that put that in place. We talk a lot about being big fans of Backblaze. It is important to note that Backblaze is more of a sync service than anything. And if you delete something from your computer, their standard is 30 days after they delete it from their system as well. they now have changed that so that you can set it to 1 year. It'll cost you $2 extra a month, which I think is pretty reasonable, or lifetime. But then it is based on how much you have. And for me, with 11 terabytes up there, I calculated it would be about $55 extra a month. So I don't use it in that way, and I'm okay with that, with having just my extra, my stuff being there for a year. And that's because if I accidentally delete something, I know what's getting backed up and the way that's working. But that is important to keep in mind if that works for you. Steve, you're a happy Backblaze user, is that right?
Yeah, I'm really happy. I can't remember if I talked about this on the show before, but I had an issue. It did the initial backup, and it went really fast. I mean, it only took a couple of days, and I thought that can't possibly be right. So I went in and I took a look, and it had backed up my hard drive and my iMac, but it had not backed up my external drive. So I did one of those live chats on their website, which I'm a total pessimist about. I'm like, I'm probably not talking to anybody that even knows what they're doing, but let's give it a shot before I call them or whatever. And immediately this guy gets on and he says, "Oh, I'm looking at your system. It's because you're using that drive was slated as a time capsule backup through your Apple system, and it won't back it up if it's labeled as a time capsule. So just go in and uncheck that box, and then it'll do it." I did that, and then it took about 2.5, 3 weeks, I think, for the total initial backup to happen. But it's all done and it's all there, and I'm super happy with it. And that's kind of the mark of a good company, is when you do have an issue, how quickly is it rectified? Can you get a hold of somebody? At least for me, and I was really happy with their service.
Cool. That's good to know. And David Carr, I can't remember. Do you use Backblaze as well?
It's so funny we're talking about this because I gave up on Backblaze about 4 days ago, and now I'm kind of kicking myself. I was having an issue. I went and renamed a hard drive. I renamed the hard drive that had my entire Lightroom catalog from like 2018 to 2020 on it. Like I'd been going through cleaning up a bunch of files. Anyway, I renamed the hard drive, and I kept getting this error message over and over from Backblaze saying it can only back this up when it's named what the previous name was. And I'm like, well, okay, well, I'll just like tell it not to back that one up, and then I'll tell it to re-back up like the new name. I couldn't figure out for the life of me. I kept getting the error message. It would just pop up like every 15 minutes. And I finally was like, I'm so sick of this. And I started looking at other services and just was like, oh, here's one. And so, but now I'm kind of going like, I kind of miss the simplicity of Backblaze. So I might be back at it and waiting a month or so for all my stuff to go back up into the cloud. We'll see. But
yeah, well, keep us updated, because there are certainly alternatives out there that I think offer some, that are decent. But I do also wonder if you had reached out like Steve did.
I know
how well they would be helpful.
I get cynical like Steve does sometimes with things like that, and I'm like, if I can't figure it out on my own, I'm just going to move on. And I do regret that. I don't know what. I think I was just frustrated. So, oh well. But I do have everything backed up onto another drive here. I just don't have that third backup currently. It's being backed up into this new service, but yeah, we'll see. I'll let you know.
Okay. All right, yeah, keep us updated. Lynn actually says she thinks it's 3 free months, 1 up front and 2 more if you sign up. Huh? I thought it was 1 up front, 1 more if you sign up. But either way, it's a pretty good deal. It saves you a handful of bucks as you move forward. So I think that's a good deal. Gareth also he remembered to change the year on his camera after remembering my video about it. So many years ago, I did do a video about, hey, it's a new year. These are the things you should update. Make sure the date on your camera has gone correct. Make sure the metadata information in your copyright information as you import in Lightroom is up to date. Those are the 2 big ones that you want to make sure you're checking in on and making sure that's all. And I've got a video coming for Pen, and I think parts of it will go to a wider audience on my YouTube channel too. Just kind of how I clean up at the end of the year. I know we're a little past it, but I think it's still worthwhile to take a look at how I make sure everything is organized, and it helps kind of reinforce the good habits you want to carry forward, so that you don't end up at the December 30th looking at your Lightroom going, God, I wish I'd taken the time each time I imported to do X, Y, and Z. That would have saved me so much time now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Lynn looks like she knows what she's talking about. She says it's an offer through the end of January. Okay, that's great. So up to 3 months free on Backblaze. If you look in the show notes, I've linked that there, I believe. If not, I will very, very soon.
Sounds great for a new customer that like myself.
There you go.
Sign
David.
up under a pseudonym, maybe.
Yeah, maybe so.
Okay. This show is going to be a little bit shorter today. I often do say that, but we really do have a hard out. My daughter and I have a date on the beach at low tide to go exploring. It's actually not that great of a low tide, but it was the best timing that we could come up with while the sun was up. There's super great low tide right now, but you got to be out there at 2 a.m. and neither of us are that committed. So...
I crack up at last week because we talked off camera before we got started. We're like, let's try to keep this to 1 hour. Shorter show. It's the New Year's right around the corner. We're probably gonna have a small audience. This will be brief and casual and get a cocktail. And we ended up going a solid 2 hours. But it was a great show. The chat room was so involved and had a lot of questions, good thought-provoking questions, and I don't know, maybe because I was drinking my whiskey, I just got a little wordy and the show went long. I do that.
I loved every minute of it and every word everybody said, and I agree. I had a lot of fun. So thank you both for hanging in there that long. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to jump into the part of the show that we love, but this is the part of the show that usually forces it to go as long as it does. So I'm gonna move this along, maybe even at the risk of seeming a little pushy today. I'll take that job on. It is my show. But this is where Pen members, you've submitted in your images. We're going to take a look at them, give you some tips and tricks for what we would do to them in Lightroom, and just kind of help you see the world as a better photographer. So I'm not off to a great start because I haven't shared my screen yet, but we are getting there.
It's all right. Anybody got any jokes?
Right now.
Here we go.
There we go. Yep. And I'll do full screen. So we're off. We can pick noses, things like that. All right. First up, we've got Debbie Derringer's. Pretty sure this is from one of our Yellowstone trips.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of things that I love that jump out at me at this image. One, the stream that just perfectly curves. We got a nice double S curve in it that just kind of leads us into the image. And then over here, this one tree really just keeps catching my eye. It's just nicely frosted. It stands out from the background nicely. I love that. What I don't love is just how close this one little curve. To me, this stream is an important part of this image leading us into it. And we come so close to the edge there, it feels a little abrupt. Otherwise, though, I think exposure is quite nice. The tonality in here, I think there's a lot to love in this image. So,
Toby, I agree with you. That was definitely my first thought. Also, you can almost do away with that little puff of snow at the very beginning of the leading line in the lower left corner. But you're going to start, coming in on those trees, which are. That's kind of what you give up. But what I would do, and this doesn't really fall in line with Lightroom tips and tricks, is I would take this straight into Photoshop and I would actually create a canvas that has about an extra 1/4 of an inch for sure on the right, possibly on the left too, with just to have a little more breathing room. And just create and do a content aware fill. And it should just kind of recreate what's happening right at the edge there to give you sort of a curve that doesn't fall off the page.
Yep. I agree. I also, just for future reference, Debbie, this image here, or this tree by itself, could make a really cool kind of minimalist shot in a couple of different ways.
Would you mind taking the crop down below the skyline, though? I just want to see what the picture looks like without the sky. Okay. I mean, it certainly brings you into all the detail that is right around the water.
It's so interesting how much it changes, because now that blue sky is gone and we're in this much more monochromatic world, and I think it has a lot of power as well.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's cool.
Definitely.
All right, we're going to move on. Brian has shimmer. This is National Creek Falls, Oregon. The first thing that I notice about this, well, I'm a sucker for this type of image. I love flowy water. We've got 0.6 seconds here, which I think is plenty of shutter speed. We still have some good detail in here without kind of getting into mush. But I'm not sure if this is coming through for you guys. The colors in the water are a little bit more tending magenta than I would expect.
I see that a lot.
Let's see. I feel like these are the highlights. So first thing, let's come down to this newish color grading panel, and let's come into the color grader, and I'm going to drag away from magenta. Again, so it's not so much that I'm adding green. This is how I think of it in my head. It's that I'm subtracting the color that I saw that I don't want. And I think there's before, there's after.
Yeah, a little heavy on the green. I'd maybe drag it towards the blue a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, is there a way of, I haven't worked with these very much, the color grading. Is there a way of reducing saturation on the grading that you just worked on from, like, does it kind of single it out rather than masking it off?
So no, this slider down here I would describe as kind of your brightness of that tonality. So working in the highlights, you can make them brighter or you can make them darker. But you're asking more about kind of masking out that area.
Yeah, because a lot of times what you find is usually you get a lot of blue that comes out of water because it's a very cool tone. And it's a little odd that we got so much magenta coming out of this, but a lot of times I reduce the saturation. If I'm shooting a waterfall, I take saturation down a lot of times in the water just so it's more white. And then I also bring my highlights down so that you can see the detail of, the falls. But there's also some really hot spots in there. So you're going to have to be careful. If you bring highlights down in this case, you're going to want to take it into Photoshop and heal some of those really bright spots. If you squint your eyes and just look at the picture, you'll notice in the upper left-hand side, there's tons of these, they almost look like, I don't know, fireflies or something over there.
That's a good way to, it almost looks like lights underneath the water, which is kind of interesting. But they're just they're a little too much. And there's a couple of them that I think are just like small and sharp that take me away from it, fully enjoying this.
And I'd love to see a bit, speaking of saturation, I'm talking about desaturating the water, but I would love to see more pop and definition and contrast in the green areas in the land, because that green is that moss and stuff is beautiful, just unapologetically bring up some vibrance and saturation on that.
Yeah. And so that's a good tool for the brush. So we've got two different brush masks on here. One is for that green area, hitting the O. You can see where I brushed haphazardly, and the water as well. Cool. All right, we're going to move on. Paul Anderson. It's quite nice.
Yeah.
It's quite nice. So black and white, very crisp, good detail. Still have detail in the shadows, still have detail in the brighter part where the bird, the swan, is being directly hit. Am I alone? I would like it just a teeny bit brighter. Somewhere in that general vicinity. Hit the J key, and you can see that I'm starting to blow out part of the wing there, so I might bring it back a little bit. And I'm just curious if we bring the shadows up just a little bit more, where we end up.
You probably put some vignetting on here too, just to draw you in even a little bit more. White vignette, of course. Heavy white vignette.
Yes. There we go.
There you go. Nice.
Oh, we don't have time for a white vignette. No.
A 1970s funeral bird.
Yes. Okay.
So Paul is an amazing photographer. For those who don't know, he's super involved with pen, and just a real inspiration. I love the guy to death. The hard thing that I have, or the problem that I have with this image, is I have such a hard time figuring out what's going on. Is there another swan's head kind of coming up towards the beak of the one whose feathers are out?
We just got one. We got one swan with his neck back in this kind of charge posture, I think, and he's coming towards us.
Oh, I see. His neck is almost like doubled up on it. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
It almost looked like there was a swan's neck coming up from the water.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I see that.
Well, John Mayfield just said he would love to see how it looks cropped in tighter, where you kind of see the splash almost like as the foreground. And I kind of was thinking the same, because I love reflections, but sometimes we can see a reflection and get so caught up in the reflection that we, like sometimes I think doing this is because you really do want to know what's going on. And it's kind of hard to tell when you see the whole frame. So that
looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it definitely
look
speaks
pretty
it
cool.
more to me.
I almost wonder, though, if Paul had submitted it like this, we'd be like, look, we can see just a hint of reflection. I'd love to see the whole
I know, yeah, it's always
It's one of those
well,
things.
maybe there's like a split the difference thing or something. I was kind of wondering if we should come down from the top a little bit. So maybe it's just moving the whole frame, the frame down a little bit or something. I don't know. But I think that I love, like I said, I love reflections. I was working on an image the other day where the reflection was like split 50-50. The horizon was going right through the middle, and it didn't look right. Even though I love seeing the reflection, I was like, well, the whole just composition of it just didn't seem right. So I don't know. I kind of like seeing this a little closer in.
Yeah, I do too. Okay. All right, we're going to move on. Eric Anderson has the chase. Now, Steve, as our resident expert in polo, these guys got nets. What is this? What sport is this?
I honestly, I don't know. So somebody in the chat room is going to have to chime in. The first thing that came to mind is this is like a, how there's hardball, baseball, and then there's softball. I'm kind of thinking it's sort of like a softball version of polo.
Okay.
But I'm just speculating completely. I have no idea.
John says extreme butterfly catching. I like it, John.
There you go.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So, cool moment captured. And this is a good lesson in shutter speed, because pretty fast, 1/500th of a second. And just about everything is frozen except little bit of tips of the hooves here of this horse who seems to be coming on the fastest. And I think that's nice, because it really does give a full sense of motion. And even if you did go faster, I still think this image would have that impact, though, because we've got the flying dirt caught nicely. So maybe I'd suggest 1/1000th of a second, so the horses were totally crisp. Otherwise, though, I think you've got a great shot here. Depth of field is great because your fall off into the back. We've got that kind of back layer that's non-distracting, serving as a nice background, just starting to be out of focus.
I would go into Photoshop, and the left horse has I don't know if there's something sticking out of its mouth. There you go.
It's his little crop. I'm not sure what the official term of that is. The little stick you encourage your horse to go faster.
Yes. Yeah. So I would just clip that out, just because it's not that big of a deal, but once you notice it, you keep looking at it, and it just looks like the horse is, got something coming out of its mouth. So I would clip that out.
Yeah.
But I love the action of this. And you've almost got a couple different images here too, because you could just isolate the woman on the right because I think the position of that horse and the dirt and kind of what's going on, the intensity of whatever she's doing is really captured there in a nice vertical, where the horse on the left side wasn't positioned, not positioned bad, but I'm not totally convinced that he's really staring her down. It kind of looks like he's looking off beyond her. It's probably just a moment where he glanced away or something. So I don't know. There's a couple ways you can go with it, but it's a great capture nonetheless.
Yeah. Yeah, her story by herself, she's got the butterfly. It looks like a ball, but I can confirm here on this end that it is a butterfly. Nice. Thank you, Eric. Some sport you down under folks play that we just don't know about up here. All right, Kevin Walk has got this one fixed highlights. So he had submitted two, and this one I'll say I saw the highlights are toned down a little nicer, and also there was some little distracting bright bit in here that he took out. Have we done this image?
We may have done one of Kevin's shots from the same location that was
Yeah.
slightly different. I saw this on Instagram the other day, and I really, really like it. I think it could be punched up a bit, though.
Yeah. Would how about coming down from some of that sky? Would you leave as much sky as we have?
If you're going to come down, I'd take the blue out.
Yeah. And then punched up. So you want to see a little more contrast.
Yeah.
You want to see a little more saturation.
Yeah, and maybe
more
some
vibrance.
dehazing. It looks just a little hazy to me. Right, that really helps anchor the foreground. I want the foreground to feel like I can literally step on it, and it just looked a bit hazy to me.
And then a little more color in the sky. So original, and after just a few tweaks to the sliders.
Yeah, I personally would leave the sky without the graduate filter, because you have a lot of crunchy, contrasty stuff in the foreground, and then I like how the sky is softer and it just kind of fades away at the top.
Yep. Nice. All right, thank you, Kevin. And Mike, submitting this black and white.
I've been babbling a lot. I'm going to turn to you, Carr. Sorry.
No, you're fine. No, it's fine. I'm just trying to, right off the bat, I'm starting to become more and more of a fan of the black and white stuff. I've always loved it, but I find myself gravitating to it more. So I really like that this is black and white, especially with snow. Sometimes snow is difficult to really get the essence of what it just the mood of it, in color. So I like this. I would probably just come up from the bottom a little bit. I feel like there's a lot of snow, and it goes up to like the middle of the frame. So it's just, it kind of puts like the virtual horizon sort of right in the middle. So this could put the horizon towards the third. I like that wisp of cloud coming up from the top left with the light hitting it. I just think that's a nice feature that I probably, if the sky wasn't interesting, I would have probably come down further. But for some reason, that kind of mirrors the movement of the mountain a little bit and kind of helps draw me into the center. The only issue I would take with this, just from if I was looking at this amongst a bunch of other landscape photos, is that I don't see necessarily like the subject. There is like this kind of bush in the middle to the left a little bit that's just kind of lost in the shuffle of all the black and white, all the texture. And I know that probably wasn't your subject anyway, like this scraggly bush. It's more the whole scene. But I get a little lost because the mountains and that kind of that valley there is just gorgeous. It's just so like ethereal. And I really want to go there with my eye, but I kind of get a little caught up in some of the foreground contrasty bits. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's not to say like go shoot it differently next time. I don't know. Just something to think about. It's yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I hear you. And there's a lot of elements that I really like in here. I just end up echoing you, David. So I'm just going to say, well, we don't have your metadata, Mike, so I'm not sure. But one of the things that is pulling me out of this image a bit is the out of focus foreground. I think there's some really cool textures to that. And I'm not even sure if that's coming over the YouTubes, if you guys can see that. But we're just slightly out of focus until somewhere kind of that back row of trees, or maybe this far left bush is where focus starts. And because you've included this and it's interesting, I want to see it. I mean, there's some cool textures, there's some cool shapes to it. I think that, finding a composition where this starts your focus and then we travel out through here and up this valley that, David, you mentioned that I just love, I think would be a good way to go.
Yeah, it's
higher,
tough. I mean, we were talking right before the show started about, sometimes when we're critiquing an image, we're talking about, well, I would shoot it this way differently. And I was bringing this up that with some of these images, it's not so much about telling you guys to shoot it differently. It's more about the editing. It's more about like, well, when you're editing it, this is what you might want to try. But in this case, this is one where I feel like there's probably an amazing shot to be had in this area. It speaks to that. It's just finding it, and because like I said, I really liked the processing. I thought the black and white looked nice. Probably could come up on the shadows a little bit in some of the darker areas, but I love the fact that you've got this misty, foggy thing. What you just did there is actually, it's kind of cool. It has its own story to it.
Yeah. And so again, we don't know what aperture, but higher aperture with your focus a little closer in the foreground, or focus bracketing, which is another thing that I'm going to be doing more of this year, because as I said, one of my goals is to get more depth into my image, and I'm finding it to be quite easy. If you're set up on a tripod, you get your couple of different focus points. Truly, you should have maybe 5, 10, 15 in an image with a lot of depth. And then Photoshop, just the same as making a panorama, Photoshop just layers them and lets the sharpest parts from each image shine through. And so it really is pretty reasonably easy to get an image with a lot of depth to it, with, when I'm speaking of that, specifically focus, from foreground in focus to the background in focus as well.
Yeah.
Cool spot, Mike. All right. Pam Case has got a sunset.
With a starburst.
Yes. Kudos for making a starburst, Pam.
Sunburst,
Yes, that's true. Sunburst. Well, it is technically a star.
It is a
star.
star.
Put my nerd hat on, so you're not wrong.
True, it is a starburst.
We don't have metadata for this one either, Pam. So I'm not sure what aperture you went up to get that. I like that, and I think I see what you were going for. With some kind of this interesting dried bushes in the foreground caught your attention, and you like the way they silhouetted. But it's just too much in my face. I feel like I'm going to get a face full of pokey bush. And, I mean, who wants that? Nobody wants that. So
I'd like to see, Toby, take the crop way down. What I want to see is if you crop the blue out, because that blue is so muted. You really need to work on it to just kind of make it vibrant. So let's just take it out and create this really warm scene. Well, okay. I mean, we're just way out of focus here. I don't know if it's the file size or if it's just a totally out of focus picture.
Oh yeah, look, we actually.
That's a tiny file. I mean,
I didn't notice that. What is the actual size? Pam, I thought we had moved past this. Let's go back to our original crop.
There's not a lot you can do with a file that size.
Yeah. But we'll leave it at that. I think that crop coming down and really making it about this kind of warm sunset with just that hill and less pokey bush in our face, I think it's good. All right. Pam says F22. So that is a great way to get that sunburst. So Pam, let's make sure you're submitting larger sizes so we can see those in the future. And we'll take that off. Okay. Hey, everybody who submitted, thank you so much. If you're watching this and you'd like to submit in the future, consider joining Pen. Photorec.tv/Pen, just $24 for your first year. And people who are Pen members continually submit. So I think they're finding some value in it, and I think you will as well. It's just a great way to kind of improve your photography, to get feedback so that you're back out in the field, you hear our voices saying, okay, make sure this foreground is in focus, or do I need all of that extra stuff over there? Is there any part of the story? Does that strengthen this image with any of its content?
Back in my old Facebook days, I was starting to get tagged quite frequently in people's posts saying, I hear Steve's voice in my head saying, flip it.
Yes,
and
right.
I always thought that was hilarious. I loved it. You'll start to, if you watch this show over and over again each week, you'll start to hear us kind of saying the same thing over and over. But
I will say too, I think the resounding sort of thing that I say to people in editing critiques and in just photography critiques in general is so much of it is compositional. So much of it is where things are in the frame, and what are you trying to say with this? Like, what is the subject that you're like? You have to imagine somebody's eyes traveling through the image, and where do you want their eyes to go? And so some images have too many points it's just too much for the eye to really concentrate on. And then sometimes they have the right points, but they're just not in the right place. And it's all subjective, but I think it's just learning how to see. So much of photography is just learning how to see it. Then comes the execution, where is it in focus? Are the colors good? Is the exposure good? Does it have the right amount of texture and clarity or whatever? Or does it have too much of that? Or does it have too much saturation? Should it be black and white? It's, again, all of that is subjective, but you learn as you do it more to just kind of just see aesthetically what's working and what's not, and learning how to just weed that stuff out.
Yeah. And I mean, you can look at the examples that we just showed. You move the crop line around and all of a sudden the entire story changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Couldn't agree more.
Which is encouraging. I think you should all be encouraged by that, because that just says that you're probably capturing. I say this all the time on the McKay tours. You guys are capturing the same stuff I'm capturing. We're all shooting the same stuff. It's just, trying to figure out where do things need to be, and in what proportion, and how high or low. And again, always the caveat that it's subjective, but there are some universally accepted kind of like norms in what looks pleasing. And so I think we're just trying to convey whatever we've discovered in that to you guys. And so thank you for putting up with it.
We had a question from the Facebook. It's this streams out to both YouTube and Facebook at the same time, but for whatever bugginess, Facebook, when you are watching there and you comment, it doesn't show me who you are. So somebody asked how to get these images so that we can see your data. So let me show that real quick here. First off, let's take Debbie's as an example. She submitted a D&G that came through with some of her changes already made. So when you're in your when you're in your Lightroom, you go to File, Export, ... I have export presets set up, but if you wanted to, there are default ones like export to D&G. D&G is Adobe's kind of open source raw format, and one of the advantages of that is that it will take any changes you've made to the raw file and include the instructions. Because remember, the main benefit of Lightroom is it's a non-destructive editor. When you make these changes, you're not actually touching the master file. When you make a D&G, it takes the instructions, the changes you made, and it writes them into the file, so it shows you the way it looks, plus the sliders are already pre-moved for you when somebody else opens up that D&G in a applicable program. If you don't care about that, and I think D&Gs kind of are our favorites because it gives us the most latitude to work with if we look at it and say, oh, we really want to change these highlights or these shadows, because that's going to have the most data in the image. But if you just want to send us JPEGs, that's fine as well. That would just be when you come down to the setting, choose JPEG, and then basically down here make sure that including all metadata. That will make sure all of that information is there with us, so we can read. If you can see up here in the top right corner, she shot this ISO 100, 28 millimeters, f8, 1 or 1250th of a second. It just kind of helps us make a little bit more informed decisions about that. And that's how you do it. File, export. And then, of course, you choose where it goes. And if you're a pen member, there is lots and lots of content on there on how to export. I have handouts and I have got videos that cover that as well. So take a look. Okay. Romaine asked that question. There you go, Romaine. I hope to see an image from you in the future because I see you post on Facebook every once in a while. We're Facebook friends, and I love your photography. So get some images into us. We'd love to chat about them. Okay, let's just go on a tangent for a few moments. Every week, a day or two before the show, I'm like, what are some of the things that would be useful to talk about or fun to talk about? And I just wondered, we've talked a lot about what's coming down the road, what we want from cameras next year. And I thought, man, these cameras have been around for a while. What happens if I Google the best cameras of 2000? And immediately, this luminous landscape article appeared. So I thought it would be fun. Let's put our faces on the screen for a minute. I thought it would be fun to chat about these for a minute and also check in with both Steve and David, because I don't think we've necessarily discussed like what your first digital camera was,
right.
Or where you kind of fall into that. But so as I said, this is from Luminous Landscape. This was originally published in an issue of Phototechniques magazine, November-December of 2001. So we are, like 19 years ago. These cameras represented the best of the best in their category for that year, 2001. And first up, the EOS D30. It used a CMOS imaging chip. It was 3.3 megapixels, producing prints up to 8 by 10 in size, and ISO. Let's see. Many users find that even ISO 400 noise from the CMOS chip is quite low. Images can be even created at speeds as high as 1600.
Wow. Man, 8 by 10.
8 by 10. 3.3 megapixels. Was this on either of your radars? David Carr, you're a bit younger than us, not to put you out there, but you're a little younger, aren't you?
I'm 46.
You're just a baby.
Yeah, we're all about the same age.
Yeah,
okay.
we're close. So it was on my radar. I was, I think in the band I was in, I remember us getting a camera for the band, and it was a Canon. It was probably the D30. I can't remember what it was. But then I decided I wanted to get into. At the time I thought I wanted to get into photography, so I bought the Nikon D70. I have it on my shelf, but I won't. Anyway, not that you need to see it. I had the Nikon D70, which was their first kind of like consumer, prosumer, consumer, whatever. It was a DSLR, and I was ecstatic about it. 6 megapixels, but this was more like 2003 or 4, so. Things had advanced way beyond 3.3 megapixels.
Yeah. I remember I was a high school teacher, not photography, computer science, Word, and some starting to get into some digital art around that time. And a history teacher actually bought this, and I was like, "Whoa, that's cool!" Because I'd had a film SLR, and then I'd had point and shoots, and we'll see. Actually, there's 2 point and shoots on this list that I owned. That I was like, "Ooh, that's cool," because you can use your lenses, and it's digital though. It's serious, but it was well out of my price range as a teacher. And well, I guess he was also a teacher, but I think he'd been teaching for longer, so a little bit better salary. It's just interesting. Look at the back. We've got that giant control wheel that has lasted for a long time, and a lot of similarities, general, and just also making sure people know that this was not a live view screen back here. This was just playback of images after the fact.
Yeah. So you said this was the end of 2001?
That's right. Yep.
So that kind of falls in what I consider to be the dark ages of my photography career, because I did all this film shooting in high school, and then I went to college and I did some photography work there. I was like the historian of our fraternity, and I did all the slideshows and stuff. But then after college, I didn't do anything. And it wasn't until I joined Abbott Laboratories, which was right after 9/11 when I got hired by them. So it was right about the time that this article came out that I was starting to work for them. And I decided to upgrade my home system to be something artsy. I got an iMac, and it was the iMac that had like the half round base and then the neck.
Yeah. I love that one.
I wish I still had it, man.
I wish they would reissue it. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's like in the Museum of Modern Art nowadays and stuff. It's just killer. But so along with that, they had iMovie. It was right when all the programs came out. iTunes, iMovie, iDVD, all that stuff. You got this whole suite with the computer. And so I went out and I bought a digital camera, and it was 1.3 megapixels. It was a Sony point and shoot that had an optical zoom. That was really important to me. But it's funny because you see articles like this and the features that camera had. And that camera, that D30, was a very expensive camera back then at 3.3 megapixels. And, you wonder why nowadays digital is the market. But back then there was this huge debate about whether digital was going to be the future, or if film was here to live on forever. And you can see why, when, okay, you're going to fork out all this money for a digital camera, and wow, you can push it to 1600 ISO. But even at 400, you're starting to see breakdowns, and 3.3 megapixels, you could blow up to an 8x10. Yeah. Why wouldn't you keep shooting film? So it was incredible how fast that changed, because just a couple years later, I ended up getting another Sony point and shoot that was like 5.1 megapixels for about the same price I paid for 1.3 2 years prior. And, kind of going from there. So
yeah,
I was never in the whole DSLR world of digital until many years later, really until 2010. And then, ultimately started my profession. But yeah, so this are the dark ages, but I do remember it well.
Yeah.
It's just on the screen here. So this was followed up with the D60, bumping up to 6 megapixels for $21.99 in April of 2002. Yeah. Fun. All right, let's look at what's next on the list. Nikon 2, the D1X. This was a 5.4 megapixel chip. And did it say price too? Speed and flexibility. It had a FireWire interface. It now officially supported 512 megabyte and 1 gigabyte micro drives. I'll talk about the micro drives in just a moment. So this had some serious build quality. If you noticed when we were looking at the screen about the EOS D30, they were really kind of touting its lightweight construction, and it was meant to be kind of a lighter weight, consumer focused camera, but I think its price put it in more of a prosumer area. But then here comes the D1X, and let's see. Did it talk about its frame rate? I think this was starting to get pretty serious with a decent frame rate, and you could even attach a GPS receiver and record location data.
Wow. That technology continues today on my Hasselblad.
Yes, but did you ever buy a new one, Steve?
Receiver? No, I lost it in New Zealand. That's what Toby's referring to. And that stupid little receiver that sits in the hot shoe of my camera is $175. No surprise, because it's Hasselblad. But I just can't. I just don't want to spend the money. There's a million other things I'd rather spend $175 on, but it is annoying that I don't have.
That's frustrating.
GPS tagging on there.
5 frames per second, and I tell you, I mean, this look I think is timeless. This is a good looking camera. Not that it really matters, but
no, it doesn't look that different. I mean, it's kind of like a commercial airline, jets. Like, they don't change the look of the jet because the jet just works. It's like that's the way it needs to be aerodynamically, and a camera kind of needs to stay in the same form and function, because especially like the pro level, the top of the line. I mean, that's in the hands of pros who are just shooting all the time. It needs to always be ergonomic, and so they make little tweaks, but it stays kind of the same shape.
It's a good point. And, one of the things that I thought would be fun for us to do on the show, I heard it actually on a comedy podcast a couple of months ago, was they found really funny 1-star reviews of, I think theirs was of movies. And so the other day, a couple of days ago, I was like, hey, I wonder, if there are fun 1-star reviews of cameras. And I couldn't find too many, but the Lytro. You remember the Lytro, that tube camera? That's got some good 1-star reviews, because that, like you say, cameras kind of need to be like this.
Yeah.
And when you greatly change them and they look like a square cardboard tube, it struggles a little bit.
Right, right. Well, they're built around like the idea of gripping them and using them, not just some art piece or something, So, and I will say too, when DSLRs, I remember when like the Canon DSLRs were becoming known for their video prowess, and you would hear that like, oh, this episode of ER was shot on a Canon whatever DSLR or something, and I remember hearing that all the time, and And I was just like, that just looks weird. Like, this is a video camera. I'm holding it like this. Like, I just always thought of the video cameras. You hold it like this, and and it's funny that we're still like kind of. That's one I don't know that I'm ever fully going to get used to, but I've accepted it because the video quality on these DSLRs or these mirrorless is pretty phenomenal. So
yeah. All right, let's move on. The Nikon Coolpix 995. This was the successor to the Coolpix 990. I'll be honest, I had one of these. I don't remember if it was the 995 or the 990. It's a 3 megapixel. It has a zoom lens. And of course, if you can see here, the half that body rotates. So instead of having an articulating LCD, none of them had that up to that point. Whole half of the body that had the LCD or the controls could rotate, and it allowed you to kind of take some fun at the hip pictures. I took this on a trip to Belize. It was like one of my first, international trips on my own, and I loved this camera so much. But I was like, I'm going to Belize. I'm going to be taking a lot of pictures, and that's when the biggest drives you could buy at that time were these micro drives. And they are basically CF cards with a hard drive in them. They are a hard drive.
Wow.
And let me tell you, they impact your battery life a little bit. It's spinning. Mine was, I think, the 512 megabyte. And I was like, oh, I'm going to Belize with 512 megabytes. I'm going to be great. And I filled it up pretty quickly, and it was kind of a disaster. But
that was a great camera. That was a great camera.
Yeah. I enjoyed it a lot. It actually fell out of my bag on the trip home from Belize and got left on the plane.
Oh man.
So, yeah. But that allowed me to get, and it wasn't my fault. It was my partner's fault at the time, really. So then I was given kind of a pass. I was like, well, I have to upgrade. I don't have a camera. So I think I went from that to the Canon G5. I think, although it doesn't seem like the G5 would be the next camera after that, but I don't know. David Carr, you like that? Steve, did you have anything to do with the Coolpix brand?
No, I didn't. But my my ex father-in-law, he's passed away. He had a couple years after this, I think. I can't pinpoint the year, but he had the Sony version of this basically, but it was a little different design. It was kind of, the lens was just a big tube, and then you twisted it 90 degrees like this Coolpix. And he was really getting into photography about the time that I was starting to get into digital photography. So I remember playing around with that thing quite a few times, and it was a lot of fun to play with. People in the chat room probably know what I'm talking about. I mean, it was a pretty popular, it was an expensive camera back then, but it was producing some pretty good images at the time.
That's cool.
Yep. And just because I see it in the chat, a couple of chats, it's fun seeing you all kind of talk about, reminiscing about your digital cameras as well. John is asking about, wasn't there a camera that used the floppy disk? Roy is saying, yes, he owns it. I never owned it. Our school owned it, and it was the Sony Mavica.
Yeah.
And the first version used a floppy disk. And actually, I don't know if it was the very next version or a subsequent one. It used a CDR mini disc.
Oh, that's
and
right.
You couldn't jiggle it after you took a picture. Like, take a picture and then go to put it in your pocket or something. You'd get an error because it was trying to write on the CD, and it would. It's like, who thought of this? But it did allow you to buy those big CDRs and get a lot of pictures on there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Back in these days, because I was just reminiscing about my first digital camera, and also the second one. It was, since I was a Sony guy, it was all memory stick. That was basically like the precursor to what we now have as an SD card.
That's right.
And those were awesome if you were in the Sony universe.
Yeah, they were very proprietary. But yeah, I think my first video camera was a Sony, and I remember, do I get the one that comes with the memory stick or not? Because I could take photos with it, and they were horrible photos. But that thing was pretty cool that you could at least store them on it. So.
Yeah, in fact, my first flat screen television, I paid an absolute fortune for it. I was living in San Francisco at the time. I was making good money. I think I paid, I'm not kidding, I think I paid $4,500 or $5,000 for this thing. And it was a Sony I think it was a 37 or 39 inch LCD flat screen.
Yeah.
So it didn't have the glass. It wasn't like plasma where it had the glass over the screen. The screen was like a computer screen. And the framework around it was glass with these beautiful speakers. It was like a piece of art. And I hung it on the wall in my apartment. And then it had a separate unit that, you know, everything plugged into that was kept in a cabinet underneath. So it made it thin. And in that unit itself had a plug-in for a memory stick. So I'd take my pictures from my camera, and I could just plug the memory stick right into that, and they would show on the television, and it's kind of cool.
That's cool.
Steve, the only thing I could think about while you're telling that story is when David McKay did his road trip earlier and you guys did the Christmas vacation skit and you came out of your house as the neighbor, as that guy. Do you remember? So it's Elaine and that whatever actor.
Yeah.
And their bedroom had that really fancy like sound system.
Oh yeah, the like
Sounds
banging,
just like
Banging
it. Are you
Olufsen?
actually
banging
that
all of them. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I wasn't that level. I was back then. I've always been into mid-century modern style and furniture and stuff, which nowadays is really trendy and popular. But back then, not many people knew about it. I liked modern design, but I was buying vintage. I mean, I was a dumpster diver basically on the side. I was making good money in the corporate world, and then on my weekends, I'd find these deals on Craigslist and stuff of people that were selling really cool, to me, furniture for next to nothing. And they had, you know, these designer names from the 50s and 60s. And so, yeah, my apartment was pretty swanky, but it wasn't to that level where people have like, you know, all the Italian design stuff with the Bang & Olufsen sound systems.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So you claim. Well, I can't remember where people could watch that. Penn members, you were emailed that clip, I believe.
I think
yeah, I probably got it.
It's pretty
floating around.
perfect.
We had so much fun doing that. We did 2 clips, and you should really watch both of them. But yeah, and the funny thing is, the first clip that David and I did together literally happened probably 20 minutes after they arrived. They got here. Their 2 dogs are running all over the house. David and Allie still have their suitcases in the RV and stuff. And David gets out his cell phone with this new gimbal that he bought. And he's like, let's record a video. It's Christmas vacation. There's an RV, Clark, because he knows I'm a big movie fanatic. And and yeah, so we spent most of our 3 days together making videos.
I mean, you can tell it wasn't just like a little, you know, quick thing. It was like pretty well done.
Yeah.
Very true to form.
There's a question in the chat room from Mary Madden. Steve, do you have an Eames chair? Yes, I do have an Eames chair. A couple different variations, but the one you're probably referring to, yes, I do, and that's my favorite piece of furniture.
Nice.
That's cool.
All right. Back to cameras. The Olympus E10. I don't remember Olympus being on my radar at all. 4 megapixel. It's got a great look to it. Looks like a nice size. Smart media cards. I don't even know what they were. And it ran off of AA batteries, which that was true. That was many early digital cameras just used standard AA batteries, and battery life was not great.
No.
And I remember for a while, some of the DSLRs would allow you to get the battery grip, and it would either use the Canon batteries or Nikon batteries, or you could put in like 6 AA batteries. And when they stopped doing that, there are people that are like, I want my AA batteries. And I'm like, no, you don't. Did you ever pay attention to what your battery is life when you like use those things? It's not good.
Right.
It's not good. And then the other camera, I actually don't remember if it was the S110 or just something right around this line I had prior to the Coolpix 995 is my memory. I had this 2 megapixel pocket camera, little flash, capable of 30-second video segments with audio.
All
right. I don't know.
Wow.
Anything else to add before we leave this?
Yeah, I don't know. I will say this. I was thinking about this because you sent us this article earlier to kind of look at. I'm not saying there aren't reasons to complain about current gear. You know, there's always something that's like, oh, I wish it did this, or I wish it did that. But you just have to look at where we've come from and where we are now. And not only it's not to say don't ever complain. It's just to say it's all getting so much better, so much more capable, and it's all at our fingertips. And you have to pay for it, but the fact that we have stuff that can do what it can do now on the level, it's mind blowing. I think sometimes we just lose. You get used to it, so you just don't appreciate it. But sometimes I just have to look at what I have, what I'm capable of doing with the gear that I've got. It's unreal, and try doing any of that on any even close to that level with these things. The fact is, a lot of really fantastic photographs were shot on some of these cameras. So it's it's not like they were slouches. They were just that was the best we had at the time. So
yeah, but I think we can agree. So here's the question: I think we can agree that they do hold you back in a way because you're limited print size, really, and 8x10 is not bad, but certainly for your wall, you want to go larger. And these cameras just really couldn't do that. And now these cameras do. They basically go as large as I think most of you want. And this is interesting. I actually said this the other night, that Epic print is hanging above our kitchen table. It is the 60x30. And, when it arrived and I'm holding it and looking at it, I'm like, this is gigantic. But after it's been on the wall for a little while, I'm like, it's a nice size. I like that. So very quickly, a big print can seem pretty normal once it's on your wall for a little while. But are we going to look in 20 years back at these cameras and say they're holding us back as much as these were?
I think we will. I think it's going to be hilarious. We're going to sit around someday and say, can you believe we were shooting 50 megapixels? Or I don't know, maybe technology will totally change. We're like, remember the days of megapixels?
Yeah, that's what I wonder. Yeah, if we'll reach a point where we don't even use that terminology. And the good thing is, static two-dimensional imagery will always be here to stay. So there's always a way to enjoy it and make it better. And so, I don't know.
Yeah. I hope we're sitting around one day saying, remember we used to lug all that heavy equipment around and the glass lenses and stuff, and now we just got these foldable plastic lenses that produce image quality so much cleaner.
Yeah.
Hey, okay, so that's a great transition. Let's hold on to that thought. So we'll get to the goals and to the actions. I just have a couple of quick tips for that. But so the Canon Rumors, we've talked about this on many shows because all of us, or not all of us, but many of us have been Canon shooters or still Canon shooters, and they are a huge market segment as we watched or as we saw that data. They have said that 2021, actually I shouldn't say, they haven't officially said, but all signs point to, and credible tipsters have said, 2021 is going to be the end of the EOS M line. That's Canon's current aps-c system. And I've been saying that seems most likely because it's just messy to have a camera and lenses that aren't upgradable to full frame in any way, and it just it's its own little thing in its own little world, and that doesn't really a good market path. But what's surprising is they're saying, all right, we will have aps-c systems for the RF, so we'll have RF aps-c cameras, but we're not going to make aps-c lenses for them. You're just going to use our RF lenses on them.
I see, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that means you're getting and buying a lens that's much larger and bigger than you need for the sensor size of the camera you're walking around with, which defeats some of the purpose of going with a smaller sensor. But Steve, you just mentioned plastic lighter lenses. Canon's clearly working that direction, not necessarily with the elements themselves yet, but these 800 and 600 millimeter lenses from Canon are very lightweight, very affordable, and made for full frame. So I don't know, just throwing this out there. Any thoughts on this? Is this terrible, or is this going to be okay, or do we have to wait and see? What do we think?
I think it's going to be okay. There's always a wait and see approach to this stuff, but when you're talking about a powerhouse like Canon going this direction, and I don't know, and I know we're going to talk about this, but all the rumors about the introductions that are supposed to be made by Canon this year coming up, you know, they're back in the innovative world, I hope, because it's really exciting. If they're the ones that are dumping a bunch of R&D into some of these newer technologies that are making things lighter or reducing elements of glass and lenses and stuff like that with coatings on the elements that you use, I think it's really, really cool. Yeah. So I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talked about the APS-C thing a few weeks ago, or several episodes back, and just how we feel about that. And I don't know. I mean, I just think more and more, like the fact that I think we might have talked about this last week, but the fact that medium format is starting to become like that next thing in line for a lot of. If there was years, it wasn't that long ago. It was like, there's no way I'm ever shooting medium format. It's too expensive. And now it's becoming a little more accessible. And I think as that becomes more accessible, full frame is going to be just like, duh, like who wouldn't shoot full frame?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's never to say that the APS-C stuff is bad. It's not bad at all. It's just, if you could have a larger sensor, why wouldn't you?
Well, I think one of the rumors I read about the next R APS-C camera that, or the one that Canon will come out with this year, is going to really be geared at like sports and wildlife photography. Yep. And that makes sense. So now you're going to start using your sensor to get more distance out of the lenses that you have, which we already do anyway. But as opposed to using the smaller sensor as your introductory level, it's more like perfecting that for the specialist, and then offering full frame at a discounted price. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of that in the mirrorless world. Rumor is that Canon's going to have a couple entry-level full frame mirrorless cameras to replace the R and RP that should be priced very aggressively from, according to the rumor mill. And yeah, I think you're right. Everything's just going to kind of, now that we're getting into the mirrorless world, you're going to have, everybody's going to be carrying around full frame. Except for the specialists that need a little extra distance out of their lenses.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. So they're approaching it from two ways. One, lighter lenses that you don't mind carrying around even if you have a smaller sensor. And two, very budget-minded full-frame cameras. Yeah. I wish we'd kept careful track over the workshops over the years. It does feel like APS-C, mostly Canon and some Nikon, made up a big chunk of McKay photography clients. That was the camera of choice for many, many years. And I feel like there is a lot more full-frame these days. I think a lot of that can be attributed to kind of Sony having affordable full-frame cameras. But so it'll be interesting to see how that continues on. Yeah. And David Carr, you mentioned the Fuji. I mean, we got this rumor of the next Fuji GFX 100S coming. That's going to be about $6,000 for a 100 megapixel camera. And $6,000 sounds a lot, but when you look at where we were just a few years ago with medium format, it's mind blowing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm, you guys know me. I'm like Mr. Buy and sell gear all the time, and it's crossed my mind multiple times this year to buy, to just invest in a medium format. I'm just not quite there yet, but I feel that knocking on my door, and I just feel like, I mean, anybody who's got like an APS-C camera right now, and is like, oh, I'm looking for the next step. I'm just like, well, I would seriously consider going full frame and going mirrorless while you're at it, and just go ahead and get there, because like it's really where you're going to want to be in a year or less, or around, you're going to want to be there. So I don't know. I just don't. Yeah.
Yeah, but to counter that, we got Wayne in the chat who said, what about hobbyist photographers who are absolutely okay with DSLR and not ready to put money to migrate to a new system? Are they left behind? And I'd say that's based on your kind of mindset, Wayne. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the current DSLRs. They don't have some of the bells and whistles, but those bells and whistles don't necessarily make what you're capturing out there any better. And so as long as that stuff is working for you, you're fine. But as you say, David, there's going to be a point where there's just mirrorless left, and that's what you're going to move to.
You know what's so funny is, right as we're talking about this, I get a message from our friend Krista Knudsen, and she says her dad is sending me an email. The whole family is looking at mirrorless. So there you go. My next video is going to be about mirrorless, because I've had so many of my Nikon friends. I feel like every Nikon friend I know has messaged me in the last month. It's been multiple people saying, hey, I'm kind of thinking about going mirrorless. What are your thoughts? And so I'd like to just do a video that's it's like the video, like photo nerds will not watch it and think it's anything profound. But I think for all the people, just to kind of answer for everyone, this is why I think it's time to just go ahead and make that jump. And I don't know, we'll see if that's helpful, but
absolutely.
Yeah,
Do it. Yep. Cool.
I will.
Good. All right. Hey, let's hit a couple of suggestions for turning goals into action. And I also have linked here. We're not going to cover it, but if you watched the last show and you've been kind of thinking about it and you can't really come up with any goals for yourself, I found an article that just has, I think it has 100 photo goals in it, from anything from like starting a 365 project, which is kind of classic beginning of the year. Ooh, I'm going to take a picture every day, which has value. Even if you fail, it has value. To things like, how you're going to market yourself better. And so there's tons of goals in there that I'd say are willing, you should take some time to read through. But real quick, I found this article on turning goals into actionable steps. And this has nothing to do specifically with photography, but on recent road trips, I was listening to an audio book that mostly was trying to put me to sleep. But it is about making it so that you have to be really accountable to yourself and having deadlines to check in with yourself. That's, if I had to boil it down to the simplest thing, it's like, I want to be a better photographer. That's a great goal. But what are the actionable items that you're going to write down? What are they? Are they going to be to have Steve and David's voices in your head when you're out in the field? If you say yes, then what are those voices you want in your head? Make a little cheat sheet card that says, what are the things to keep in mind? And make sure that you have that card made by the 1st of the year and then memorized by the 10th of the year. It's a little bit of a silly example, but it's those kind of things.
That's actually a super valuable example, because I have David McKay's voice running through my head all the time when I'm photographing something and other times. And I would love to eliminate a bunch of the stuff that he says that's running through my head and just hold on to the photo stuff that he talks about. You guys, we've been on tour, you know what I'm talking about.
That's funny.
Yes. Yeah. So here they are. Make your goal specific. In this case, the person, they say, they want to lose some weight. Okay, make that specific. I want to lose 5 pounds. I want to lose 10 pounds. Or I want to save $500. Set a deadline, but here's what's important. You got to have some increments to that deadline. Don't say in June 1st, I'm going to check in with myself, because I don't want to insult anybody, but if you're like me, then you're going to kick your feet up, and then all of a sudden June 1st, you're going to go, oh crap, I had this goal. Let me reevaluate and reset. And it's not helpful. You're going to feel bad about yourself. So those incremental steps, and then create accountability. So check in with yourself. If you're not at a certain point, I don't want to say consequences, but have, be responsible about this and take it step by step. And celebrate progress is important.
Yeah.
Make sure, maybe it's to improve as a photographer. And if you've put in actionable steps that worked for you, then say, okay, then I'll treat myself to a new piece of gear, whatever it be, a nice camera strap, or maybe that new lens you've been eyeing, but prove to yourself that you can do the goals you've set with what you have now. Because the truth is, you can. You absolutely can.
Yeah, that's good.
Last one is reset and keep going. And I'll just say this, Steve and I, we were on just a little bit early and we were chatting a little bit. Obviously today, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, is a little bit dark in American times. But this COVID's not going away quickly. I think lots of us, maybe I was a little bit more hopeful. I don't know what people were thinking, but it's clear that it's going to be hanging on for a while. This vaccine rollout is slow. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see more lockdowns. And I say all that not to be dark, but just for you, as you are setting your goals, to be realistic at the same time, and don't be too hard on yourself if there are outside forces that are hindering you from meeting your goals.
Yeah, I that's a great point, Toby. And I know many of you were on the show last week, and I kind of became very transparent about some of my struggles last year around just being creative and being inspired to shoot and stuff like that. And just, it was a tough year for a lot of people. And I feel really fortunate. I think I came out of the year doing okay, all things considered. We've got our health and we've got our family, and but there's like you said, the dark cloud of just not just the disease that's out there, but what people are going through. And I would encourage, I can't say this enough, just don't be hard on yourself. And not to just plug Penn, but it really is a group of super nice people that are there to just come alongside you, and the whole iron sharpens iron thing, just progress your photography. And those who have been involved in it, hopefully you can chime in or attest to the fact that that is true. That's the whole reason we started the company. And it's still a small company and very personable, and the people are so nice. I would just encourage you to get involved there, because it is, I've said this before on the show, I'm an extremely insecure person when it comes to my art and getting started. Man, I had 2 years of, one of those 2 years literally laying on a psychologist's couch, pouring my heart out every week. It can be really, really hard, and I get how difficult it is to put yourself out there. But trust me, if you just set those incremental steps like Toby's talking about, you'll get to where you need to go. But you got to be intentional about it.
Yeah, if I can add one thing to that, because I said this in my last podcast video thing, that something I've been really sort of convicted of in my own heart and mind is my perfectionism. I am just an utter perfectionist, and I'm learning to make peace with imperfection, but it's not easy. But what I've learned, and one of my goals for this year is to press forward with getting things done. They don't have to be perfect. There's the expression I've heard, and I don't know who came up with it, but don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think that has been my Achilles heel. Is I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to make this YouTube video because it's not going to be perfect, or I know it's not perfect yet, so I'm not going to put it out there. I'm not going to do this podcast. I'm not going to take this photo. I'm not going to edit this photo. And it's like, you'll never get anything done. And it's not to say don't strive for excellence. There's a difference between excellence and perfection. Perfection is really unattainable. We all know that, but excellence is attainable, and it grows. And you're not going to be as excellent today as you might be 5 years from now. But don't just put junk out there just for the sake of filling up the Instagram feed or something. But don't be hard on yourself. I think it is very important to cut yourself some slack, and be willing to make mistakes and fail, because that's really, it's so cliche to say it, but that is really where you grow. And
you reminded me, David, of an example I heard a number of years ago. I think a pastor had talked from the pulpit about it, but basically they took two groups of people, and they encouraged one group of people to make a ceramic pot as perfect and as beautiful as they possibly could. Spend all their time making that one pot as perfect as possible. And the other group of people they encouraged to make as many pots as they possibly could in the allotted amount of time. And what they found was, overwhelmingly, the people in the group that were making as many as possible, some of the pots that they were turning out towards the end were far superior than the people that had spent all this time. And it was across the board, every single person in the particular study or whatever. I don't know who to reference, but it makes sense. It's put in practice to work, and that's how you will become better. Because I'm like you, I will spend hours trying to find the perfect, and it does become an Achilles heel.
Definitely.
Nice. Well said. I think that's a great place to wrap up the show. I love what both of you, the gentlemen, just shared, and the cues I see. One I saw you answer earlier, Steve, giving Timmy some tips for documenting puppies, and another one is everybody needs to go to Angela Redmond's Facebook page and wish her a happy birthday.
Oh, okay.
Is it today? Oh, no, it's Saturday. It's Saturday. So we need to make sure we do that in time for Saturday. But that's it. So we're going to wrap this show up, and I'll just say we will be back next week. I've got an exciting guest that will be joining us, so watch for that announcement. And Pen members who are watching this, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Everybody watching this, whether you're a Pen member or not, we appreciate you watching. Thanks so much. Take a moment, hit that thumbs up, and also click down into the description and follow these two gentlemen. Thank them for their time. See what they're up to in between the show. Follow them on Instagram. Because as I said at the beginning, Steve actually is posting occasionally now. So it's great. I'm just going to, you can post every day for the rest of this year, and I'll still make that announcement.
You'll still
Yeah,
say, hey,
right.
that's awesome. I do need to put more time into that.
All right. So Steve, David, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And wish everybody a good day, and see you next week.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.